I only signed up because I was broke. It was my second semester out of grad school, and I was juggling 3 dead-end gigs that barely paid enough to keep my lights on. So when I saw the flyer in the campus library, sleep study participants needed minus $125 per night, I thought, hell, getting paid to sleep? Sign me up. The ad said it was part of a university neuroscience study on REM cycles, nothing shady. I filled out an online form, did a short interview, and a few days later I was approved. They said it would be 10 nights, each one in a, quote, controlled sleep environment. And I couldn't bring my phone, just clothes, a toothbrush, and a willingness to be observed. Whatever. I was tired anyway, of life, of dating apps, of the constant background noise in my head. I figured it'd be kind of like a spa. It wasn't. The lab was on the top floor of the university hospital. Clean, quiet, slightly clinical. The sleep room looked like one of those tiny hotel rooms in Tokyo. Bed, side table, fake window with blue LED lights simulating moonlight. A mirrored wall opposite the bed that I knew, because they told me, was one-way glass. What they didn't tell me? That someone would be sitting behind that glass the entire time I was asleep, and that eventually I'd start imagining what that person looked like. It started out normal. Night 1, I was nervous. I lay there in the unfamiliar bed, all wired up, heart monitor patches on my chest, a pulse tracker on my finger, an elastic band around my torso to track breathing. I could barely move without something beeping. I kept glancing at the mirror, wondering who was behind it. Were they bored? Watching TikToks while my data streamed in? Were they judging how I curled up like a kid when I slept? I didn't even know their name. Then I met him. It was after night 3. I was heading out of the lab just before sunrise, rubbing sleep from my eyes, when I saw him at the reception desk. Tall, mid-30s maybe. Messy brown hair, a 5 o'clock shadow that looked permanent. He was flipping through a clipboard, scribbling notes. "Eric, right?" he said without looking up. I nodded, surprised. Yeah. He looked up then, and I swear to God, his eyes were the kind that stop you cold. Blue. Calm. Observant in a way that felt personal. "I'm Nate," he said. "I've been supervising your overnight sessions." "Oh," I said dumbly. "So you've been watching me?" He smiled, but it wasn't condescending. Monitoring, mostly. But yeah, I guess you could say that. That was the moment something shifted. Because now the person behind the glass had a face. From that night on, I couldn't stop thinking about him while I tried to fall asleep. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, wondering, is he watching now? Does he notice when I roll onto my side, when I kick off the blanket? Is he watching when I touch myself? I didn't. Not at first. But the thought was there, and once it was there, it stuck. I told myself it was nothing. Just some random hot guy I'd seen once. He probably had a boyfriend, or a girlfriend, or a PhD, and zero interest in some guy getting paid to sleep. But then, night 6 happened. I'd been struggling to sleep all day. I came in wired, restless. I told the lab tech, some grad student I barely knew, that I wasn't sure I could knock out. She just shrugged and handed me a paper cup with a melatonin tablet in it. That night, I lay there for over an hour, staring at the mirrored wall, my body still but my mind racing. And then, for some reason I couldn't explain, I whispered, "Are you watching me?" I expected silence, but the light above the door, just a small green LED, blinked once. I froze. Was that deliberate? Was someone signaling? Was he signaling? My skin prickled. I rolled onto my side, facing the mirror, my heart pounding like I'd said something dangerous. Something real. That night, I had the most vivid dream I've had in years. And when I woke up, sweaty, disoriented, hard, I looked straight at the mirror, and for a split second, I could have sworn I saw someone move behind the glass. I told myself I imagined it, that flicker of movement behind the mirror, the green light blinking, the shape of something that didn't quite look like medical equipment. Maybe I was half awake. Maybe the melatonin was playing tricks on me. But the moment stayed with me the next morning. And so did the look in Nate's eyes when I passed him in the hallway. He didn't smile like he had before. He looked alert, focused, like he already knew what kind of night I'd had. "Hey," he said, stopping me gently with a hand on my arm. "You sleep okay?" I hesitated. "Yeah, actually." "Weird dreams, but I knocked out eventually." He nodded. I noticed. That should have been a throwaway comment. Routine lab banter. But the way he said it, low, deliberate, it made my skin buzz. He noticed. He watched. I looked down at where his fingers were still lightly touching my forearm. He didn't pull away right away, and neither did I. That day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went home, climbed into my actual bed, and laid there wide awake, replaying every second of that exchange. His hand, his voice, that calm confidence, like he knew more than he let on. And then the whisper came back to me. "Are you watching me?" I hadn't meant to say it aloud, but maybe some part of me had. By night 8, I wasn't even pretending I wasn't hoping to see him. When I arrived at the lab, the tech at check-in, some new guy with too much gel in his hair, handed me the usual paperwork. But taped to the clipboard was a sticky note, written in Nate's handwriting. "Room 4 tonight. Different setup. Let me know if anything feels off. N. Room 4. That wasn't my usual space. I followed the hallway, heart already pounding. The door to room 4 was slightly ajar. I stepped in. Same size room, same fake window, same clinical white bedding. But no wires, no patches, no elastic band, no pulse reader, just a bed, a folded pair of lightweight sleep pants, and a note on the pillow. "No monitors tonight, just observation. Try to sleep naturally. Let's see what you do when you think no one's tracking." And then his initials again. My hands trembled just slightly as I changed into the sleep pants. I got into bed slower than usual. The mirror across from me looked identical to the others, but somehow it didn't feel the same. I couldn't stop staring at it. The lights dimmed automatically, like always, but the feeling didn't fade. I wasn't just part of a study anymore. I was being watched, not clinically, not scientifically, personally, intimately. I whispered it again. "Are you watching me?" The green light blinked once. This time, I smiled. I lay there for a while, eyes half-lidded, not even trying to fall asleep. My fingers played with the edge of the blanket. My chest rose and fell in a slow, deliberate rhythm. The silence pressed in close, heavy with something unspoken. Eventually, I whispered, "What do you want to see?" I knew I wouldn't get a response, but I also knew he was listening. That night, I didn't sleep quickly. I stayed in that space between awake and dreaming for what felt like hours, imagining what he looked like in that control booth. Was he leaning forward, arms crossed? Was he biting the inside of his lip like I sometimes did? Was he writing anything down? Or just watching? And then the dream started. Or I thought it was a dream. I was lying in the same bed, in the same room, but it felt warmer, heavier. My limbs didn't want to move, and there was a hand, his hand, pressing gently against my chest. Not in a scary way, not controlling, just resting there, steady, real. And I swear, even in the fog of half-sleep, I heard it. "Eric." My name, said so softly it was barely a breath, like it wasn't meant to wake me, like it was meant to sink into my skin and stay there. When I woke up the next morning, I didn't say anything to the tech at the desk. But Nate was there, leaning against the far wall, pretending to review something on a tablet. I stopped in front of him. He didn't look up, but he said, casually, "Sleep okay?" "Yeah," I said, watching him. He finally glanced at me, lips tugging into the faintest smile. "You moved a lot less last night," he said, then added, so quiet I almost didn't catch it. "And you talk in your sleep." That line stuck with me the rest of the day. You talk in your sleep. I wanted to ask him what I said. I wanted to know if I'd whispered his name. If I'd said something embarrassing. If I'd moaned. but I didn't ask. I just stood there, stunned and flustered, watching him disappear into a hallway marked "Staff only," acting like he hadn't just dropped a bomb into my chest and walked away. That night, I almost didn't go back, not because I didn't want to, but because I wanted to too much. What started as just a gig, a way to make money while catching up on rest, had morphed into this slow, quiet obsession. It wasn't about the study anymore, not the data, not the sleep. It was about him. It was about the mirror. It was about whatever this was becoming. Still, I showed up. Of course I did. The check-in girl barely looked up from her monitor as she buzzed me through. "Room 4 again," she said. "No vitals tonight either. Just behavior monitoring." That was the phrase she used. Behavior monitoring. I stepped into the room, heart already thudding in anticipation. Same setup. Same mirror. Same folded sleep pants on the bed. But this time, there was something else, sitting neatly on the side table. A bottle of water, and a note taped to it. "Try not to get too worked up tonight. N." I laughed under my breath. Quiet, breathless, like I'd been caught doing something dirty. Because maybe I had. And maybe he liked it. I changed, lay down, and stared straight at the mirror. I didn't say anything this time, but I didn't have to. I knew he was there. I could feel it. My skin prickled in the way it always did when someone's gaze lingered too long. I pulled the blanket up to my waist, left my chest bare, and let my arm fall casually over the edge of the bed. My breathing was steady. But my thoughts weren't. And eventually, just like the night before, I drifted into that hazy half-sleep again. That was when I felt it. Not a dream. Not this time. It started with warmth near the side of the bed, a shift in the air, then the soft, unmistakable sound of a chair moving inside the room. I should have panicked, should have sat up, asked who was there, demanded an explanation, but I didn't. I stayed still, eyes closed, pretending to sleep. There was a pause, then the lightest pressure against the side of my thigh, fingers resting. Not moving. Just there. I held my breath. And then he moved his hand slightly. Not up. Not down. Just enough for me to feel it was real. The texture of his skin. The warmth of his palm. He didn't speak. Neither did I. He was close now. I could smell his cologne. Something woodsy, faint, clean. My chest rose and fell slower. I think I wanted to see what he'd do next. He placed something on the nightstand. I heard the quiet click of it. Then he leaned closer. His voice, finally. "Eric." My name again. Like a secret, like a confession. I opened my eyes. He was crouched beside the bed. Not behind glass. Not in another room. Right in front of me. Nate. He looked nervous, not guilty, not ashamed, just real. We stared at each other for what felt like forever. "I shouldn't be in here," he said quietly. "I know that." I nodded, but didn't pull away. "Why are you?" His jaw flexed. He sat back on his heels and looked down for a second, like he was searching for a better answer than the truth. Finally, he said, "Because you started talking to me." "In my sleep?" He shook his head. "No," he said. "Before that first night you looked at the mirror. When you whispered, 'Are you watching me?' My stomach flipped. You heard that?" He gave the smallest nod. And I haven't stopped thinking about it since. He stood up slowly, like he was giving me a chance to stop him. I didn't. He walked toward the door, but paused with his hand on the knob. "You can report this if you want," he said. "You wouldn't be wrong to. I crossed a line." I sat up in bed. "No," I said, my voice raspier than I expected. "You didn't." He turned around. Our eyes met again. I could have said more. I could have asked him to stay. But instead, I just held his gaze until he nodded once, silently and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him, and the mirror went dark. I didn't sleep the rest of the night, not because I was scared, because I was awake in every cell of my body, wired, burning, vibrating with something I couldn't name. I lay in that narrow twin bed, blanket tangled around my legs, staring at the now dark mirror like it might light up again and bring him back. But it didn't, and neither did he. In the morning, there was no note, no water bottle, no green light blinking, just silence. The intern who checked me out didn't say anything different, didn't act like anything had happened. If she knew Nate had broken protocol, she didn't show it. By the time I got home, I was already spiraling. Had I misread it? Had I imagined the whole thing? No. I felt his hand on my leg. I heard his voice. The way he said my name like it meant something, I could still feel the warmth of his fingers hours later. So then, why the silence? Why disappear? I told myself I wouldn't go back that night. I'd already done enough sessions to get paid. They said you needed to complete 7 nights minimum for full compensation. I'd done 8. I could walk away. But when 9 p.m. rolled around, I was standing in front of the lab entrance with my duffel bag, pretending I had a choice. The same intern buzzed me in. "Room 2 tonight," she said, not looking up from her screen. "Room 2, my original room. Not room 4, the safe one, the wired one. The one where there was a visible camera in the corner and wires from my chest and head. As if we were pretending none of it had happened. I lay on the bed stiffly while she attached the monitors. "Sleep well," she said, then left without another word. The lights dimmed. The hum of the white noise machine kicked in. The mirror stayed dark. No blinking light. No signal. I tried to relax. I tried to sink into the mattress and let my thoughts drift like I used to. But everything in me was on high alert. I kept staring at the ceiling, blinking against the glow of the faux moonlight. Where the hell was he? I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. The room was still, the air heavy. I blinked in the darkness, body aching like I hadn't moved in hours. And for a second, I thought I was alone again. That I'd dreamed everything, that none of it had been real. But then, that sound, the quietest click of a door, and a soft shuffle of footsteps on linoleum. I didn't open my eyes. Not right away. I waited, felt, listened. The footsteps stopped near the bed. A pause, and then his voice. Barely a whisper. "You shouldn't have come back." I opened my eyes. He was sitting beside me, in the single metal chair, tucked into the corner of every room, dragged closer to the bed. Nate. His hair was messy, like he'd been pulling at it. He wasn't wearing a badge. No tablet, just a dark hoodie and jeans. "I thought you were done," he said, staring down at his hands. I wasn't. He looked at me then, and I could see it all in his face. The war inside him. Desire, guilt, restraint, fear. But under all that, something softer. Something like hope. "I'm not supposed to be here," he said. "You said that last time, too." He huffed out a breath, eyes dropping again. "You don't get it. If anyone finds out, I won't say anything." He looked up. "Why not?" I held his gaze. "Because I don't want you to stop." That was the moment the line vanished. He leaned forward, slow and unsure, until our knees touched. His hand hovered, then dropped onto my leg, just above the blanket. Just like last time, only this time, I reached down and placed my hand over his. He flinched a little at the contact, but he didn't pull away. Neither did I. We sat there for a long time, not moving, just breathing in sync. My thumb brushed over his knuckles. His fingers curled slightly, like he couldn't believe it was happening. "Do you do this with all the participants?" I asked, teasing, just to break the tension. His head dropped forward with a soft laugh. "Jesus, no." "Good," I said. Silence. Then I asked the question that had been sitting heavy in my chest for days. "Why me?" He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter than ever. "Because you didn't act like you were being watched. I tilted my head. That's the whole point of the study. I know, he said, but the others, they were stiff, overly conscious. He looked at me again. You looked right at the mirror, like you knew, like you weren't afraid of being seen. I swallowed. I wasn't. That did something to him. His jaw clenched, his fingers tightened slightly under mine. I think about you, he said. The words dropped like a stone in water. I didn't speak, didn't breathe. I watched the tapes, he added. Even the ones I'm not assigned to. I tell myself it's for the data, but it's not. No. I let go of his hand then, not to push him away, but to slide it higher. Up his forearm, then to his jaw, gently cupping his face. He leaned into it, eyes fluttering closed, like he'd been waiting to be touched for longer than he could admit. And finally, he whispered, "You don't know what you're doing to me." I smiled. "Then show me." The air between us was electric. His face still rested in my hand, the warmth of his skin grounding me in the moment. His breath was uneven. Not fast. Not panicked. Just shaky in a way that told me he hadn't let anyone in like this in a long time, if ever. "You're not scared?" he asked, eyes still closed. I shook my head, fingers tracing his jaw. Of what? Of what this is? Of what I am? My brow furrowed. What are you? He opened his eyes then, and something about the way he looked at me made my chest ache. Like he was expecting me to flinch. Like he'd been rejected for less. But I didn't flinch. Instead, I whispered, "Whatever it is, I'm not running." And that's when he kissed me. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't rough. It was the kind of kiss that builds from pure restraint, the kind where you can feel all the held back wanting loaded into every second of contact. His lips were soft, warmer than I expected, and careful. So goddamn careful at first, like he was testing the boundary of what I'd allow. I didn't just allow it, I pulled him in deeper. His hands gripped the edge of the mattress, the chair screeching a little as he shifted closer. Our knees bumped, and I parted my lips against his, tilting my head to catch him again. It felt like falling, but not the bad kind. It was slow and grounded and a little terrifying in its tenderness. When we finally broke apart, he didn't move far, just rested his forehead against mine. "I've never," he started, but didn't finish the sentence. "You don't have to explain," I murmured, but he pulled back slightly, his eyes still searching mine. "I've never done this with anyone I've watched. Not like this." "You make that sound creepier than it is," I teased. He chuckled, really laughed for the first time, and it melted something in my chest. "Maybe I am a little creepy," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Maybe I liked being watched." That stopped him. His eyes met mine again, and this time they were darker. Hungrier. "You did, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. We both knew the truth of it now. This hadn't started with that kiss. It started the first night I looked into that mirror and wondered who was behind it. It started with me whispering into the dark, testing the air, asking to be seen. And he saw me, maybe more clearly than anyone ever had. "Let me stay tonight," he said suddenly. "What?" "In the room. Just..." He shook his head, eyes darting to the mirror and back. "Not to watch, not as part of the study, just with you." I stared at him, not because I was surprised by the request, but because I wanted that too. He looked nervous after he said it, like he expected me to laugh or say no. But I scooted over, lifting the blanket. "Then come here." For a second, he didn't move, just stood there, like crossing the room was some huge leap. Like once he stepped over that invisible line, he couldn't pretend it didn't mean something. Then he slid into the bed beside me. It was small, twin-sized, barely enough room for one person, let alone two grown men. Our bodies were pressed from shoulder to knee, breathing synced, the blanket tucked awkwardly around us. I shifted to face him, and he did the same. We were so close, I could feel the warmth of his breath on my cheek. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. He reached for my hand under the blanket, his fingers lacing through mine. I think that's what did it. Not the kiss. Not the confession. Not even the fact that he was technically breaking about 100 ethical rules. Just being there. It was the way he held my hand. Like he'd wanted to for longer than he'd ever admit. Like holding it meant something real. No one had ever looked at me like that before. Like they'd studied every version of me from behind glass and still wanted the one in front of them. Eventually, I fell asleep like that. His hand in mine. His body warm beside me. And for once, the mirror didn't matter, because the person I'd been reaching for was right there. I didn't want to open my eyes. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I'd actually slept. Not just passed out or crashed. Slept. Deeply. Warmly. Without dreams. Without panic. Without feeling like I was missing something. Because I wasn't missing anything. He was right there. Or he had been. When I finally blinked awake, the bed beside me was empty. Still warm, though. The impression of his body was still pressed into the mattress. His scent still clung to the pillow, but he was gone. I sat up slowly, rubbing sleep from my eyes. The room was quiet. Too quiet. No intern buzzing around. No knock on the door. Just soft, artificial morning light streaming from the simulated window. I checked the table. No water bottle. No note. No green light blinking on the ceiling camera. But there was something different. My phone. They hadn't let me have it in the room before. It had always been locked up at the front desk with my keys and wallet. But this morning, it was sitting on the nightstand, with one new message. Unknown number. You sleep differently when you're not being watched. I stared at the screen for a full minute, heart in my throat. Then typed back. Me. You sure about that? No reply. Not at first. I sat there for a while, letting the silence settle over me, trying to decide whether I was disappointed or just stunned, because I didn't know what this was, what we were. He'd crossed so many lines. And I let him. Hell, I wanted him to. But now that the night was over and the air was back to sterile and fluorescent, I didn't know what came next. I checked out with a different intern. Some guy the first hadn't seen before. He handed me my envelope of compensation and didn't make eye contact. That's your final session, right? He asked. I hesitated. Yeah, I think so. He nodded like he didn't really care. I left the lab feeling like I'd stepped out of a dream. The ride home was quiet. I didn't play music, didn't check social media. Just sat there in the train seat, watching the city slide by, feeling like something had shifted permanently. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Not just the way he kissed me, but the way he looked at me in the dark. The way he said my name like it meant something. The way he left without saying goodbye, but gave me just enough to know it wasn't the end. I kept checking my phone. No reply. I didn't want to be that guy. The one who falls for the first man who touches him under dim lab lighting and breaks the rules just enough to make it feel thrilling. But it wasn't just about that. He saw me, and not in the metaphorical way, in the literal one. He watched me sleep. Night after night, he saw my weird movements, my nervous habits, my unguarded moments, and he still wanted me. How do you not let that mess you up a little? The next morning, I woke up to a new text. Unknown number. You free Friday night? My chest tightened. Me. Depends. Am I being observed? A pause. Then, unknown number. Only if you want to be. I make dinner. You bring whatever wine pairs with moral ambiguity. 8 p.m.? I smiled at my screen like an idiot. Me. Send the address. I'll be there. But only if I get to fall asleep next to you this time. He didn't reply right away, but I could almost hear the smile and the 3 dots that blinked on my screen for a few long seconds. Then, unknown number deal. This time, no mirror, just me. Friday came fast. Too fast. I spent most of the day pacing around my apartment like an idiot, trying on 3 different outfits even though he'd only asked me to bring wine. I don't know what I thought would happen. Maybe he'd act different outside of the lab. Maybe he'd pretend it had all been some heat-of-the-moment mistake. But the second I rang his buzzer and his voice came through the speaker, "Come on up. Doors open," I knew he hadn't changed his mind. The building was an old converted brownstone near the university. Quiet and unassuming. I climbed 2 flights and stepped into a space that was equal parts cluttered and cozy. Plants in the windows, books stacked everywhere, mismatched coffee mugs drying on the rack. It felt lived in. Honest. He stood in the kitchen, barefoot in jeans and a black t-shirt, sleeves rolled halfway up his forearms. His hair was a little messy. He looked like he hadn't overthought this at all. "Hey," he said, giving me a smile that nearly knocked me out. I held up the bottle of wine. "Brought a red. Morally ambiguous enough for you?" He laughed. "Perfect. Dinner's almost ready." We didn't kiss right away. We didn't need to. The air between us was already warm, familiar. I watched him move around the kitchen, setting 2 plates, stirring something on the stove. He looked over his shoulder at me more than once, like he was checking to make sure I hadn't changed my mind. I hadn't. Dinner was simple: pasta, garlic bread, a salad he barely touched. We talked about everything but the lab: work, music, the neighborhood. He told me he used to be a night owl before he started working nights professionally. I told him I used to have trouble sleeping, even before the study. "You didn't look like it," he said, sipping his wine. "That's because you only saw the part when I was finally knocked out." He smiled, that same soft smile from the control room. I saw a lot more than that. We let that hang between us for a moment. Then he stood up and took my hand. "Come here." He led me into the bedroom. Small, clean, nothing fancy. No mirror on the wall, no cameras, no ambient LED lights pretending to be moonlight. Just a bed. And him. We didn't rush it. There was no urgency, no fumbling. Just his fingers tracing slow paths along my arms, my back, my chest. His mouth finding mine over and over, like he couldn't quite believe it was real. We undressed each other without a word. Just slow breaths and soft touches. When he pulled me into bed, I let him. When he wrapped his arms around me, like he'd been waiting years to do it, I melted into him. And when he whispered my name against my skin, not like a lab subject, not like a patient, but like a man saying it to someone he wanted to keep, I closed my eyes and let the world go quiet. We didn't talk about what this was, not that night. We just lay there, skin against skin, warmth against warmth, until I drifted off, his hand resting low on my stomach, breath soft at the back of my neck. This time, there was no mirror, no wires, no observation, just 2 people in the dark, finally letting go. The morning sun spilled across his sheets. Real sunlight this time, not the cold, pre-programmed simulation from the lab. It warmed the back of my neck and made me blink awake slowly, like the universe was giving me a soft landing. I reached back instinctively, half asleep, hand searching behind me. He was still there. Nate. Still wrapped around me, his chest against my spine, one arm tucked lazily under my body, the other across my waist. His breathing was steady, slow, like he hadn't slept like this in a long time either. It was quiet, no machines humming, no beeps or buzzes, no blinking lights watching from the ceiling. I lay there for a while, just listening to him breathe, feeling the weight of his body behind me, the rise and fall of his chest against my back. Eventually, he stirred, not fully waking, just shifting, his hand moving across my stomach, pulling me just a little closer. His mouth brushed the top of my shoulder and I smiled, eyes still closed. "You awake?" he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "Barely." He pressed a kiss to my shoulder again, slower this time. "Good," he said. "Stay here a while." I didn't move, didn't even pretend to check my phone or look for my clothes. There was nowhere else I wanted to be. "Remember the first night?" I asked, after a while. When you said you were monitoring me, he groaned softly into my neck. Yeah, that was a lie, I laughed. What? Okay, not a lie. But it wasn't just data collection. I was watching you, he paused, like I was trying not to fall for you. I turned to face him. He looked serious, sleep-tousled hair, faint shadows under his eyes. That steady, careful gaze I remembered from the mirror, but softer now, unhidden. You already had, I said. He smiled faintly. I think I had. We kissed again. No urgency, no hidden tension. Just the quiet press of lips, the way two people kiss when everything else has already been said, and the way they touched each other through the night. I've never had anything like this, he admitted. Like what? This ease, this feeling? He brushed my cheek with his thumb. I always thought I'd be the one watching from behind the glass, never the one in the bed. Guess we're both out of our roles now, he laughed. What now? I shrugged. We get breakfast. We see what happens. We stop pretending that what we had was a side effect of a study. He nodded slowly. Okay. You done watching? I teased. He leaned in, eyes locked on mine. No, he said, but now I get to do it up close. We stayed in bed another hour, talking, laughing, tangling our legs and arms like we'd already had years of practice. And when we finally got up and went about the day, no paperwork, no electrodes, no protocols, it felt like a beginning, not a secret, not a mistake, just real. He didn't need to watch me from behind the mirror anymore. He was right here, and I was wide awake for all of it.